Imagine saying the general population feels this way, but then the general population votes a different way. And you're like, well, I think you're just wrong. I mean,
I do think they're wrong. I think they're wrong. If tomorrow there was a vote to say we should enslave all black people and the democratic process went through, black people are 13%. Anyway, but there is definitely a right-wing takeover. And here's XUC responding to what I had to say earlier, like what I had to say yesterday. XUC reacting to me, calling out Asmongold for the rise of right-wing sentiment that's making waves in streaming. And the reason why I talked about this is because like Amaranth and many other content creators that previously were like seemingly socially conscious or somewhat progressive are now openly saying like unhinged right-wing shit. Okay, Amaranth made inferences to like, you know, LGBTQ activists dying in the California wildfires, right? And you look bad smelling. I smell amazing. But regardless, XQC responds to that. So let's take a look at what he had to say about it. Wait, why is there no?
People voted for Trump. Okay. Bro, regardless of what we were saying, okay, look at the amount of votes. Imagine saying the general population feels this way, but then the general population votes a different way.
Wait, I think he misunderstood my point. No, I understand that right-wing sentiment is very popular. XQC thinks I don't understand that. No, I actually do understand that. I talk about it all the time. I disagree with the popular sentiment, and I also predict that once the impact of the Trump administration's actions are felt by broader subsects of American society, then they will start realizing that it's no longer a good thing. The reality of the matter is, it's not necessarily that Donald Trump was incredibly popular. It was more so that the Democratic Party was incredibly unpopular, right? And this obviously, I mean, this has been the case for many instances throughout history where we look back and go, yeah, these were really incredibly violent things that we did to other people. Slavery was popular. I mean, sentiment in Germany was popular. It doesn't mean that it's correct. Okay. He simultaneously says you grift to the left because it's popular while also saying right-wing ideas are more popular. Yeah, that it doesn't make sense. It obviously doesn't make sense. But my point is, yes, the right-wing agenda brought forward by Donald Trump is very popular right now. And I talk about this extensively. I talk about this every single day. It's because a lot of people interpret the Trump administration as like doing something, doing anything, rather than keeping the regular order of business in line. Because a lot of people demanded a shakeup, right? That's it. A lot of people demanded a shakeup, and Donald Trump's approval ratings show that. Because they voted for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump won, because he was the mallet that would destroy the American government. Because for a lot of people, after years and years of neoliberal austerity and social safety nets diminishing and the quality of life, the relative quality of life getting in spite of the reality that, technological advancements have made us feel as though our lives are getting better, okay? The relative quality of life has worsened in the United States of America. Productivity has gone up, whereas wages have remained stagnant. They have not adjusted to the productivity. This is at the heart of capitalism. And a lot of income inequality exists in this country to the same degrees that it existed in the Gilded Age. These are the reasons as to why many people feel uncertainty about their future. They're angry, they're resentful, they hate these institutions, and they thought that Donald Trump was going to break these institutions. And Donald Trump is breaking these institutions, but not in the direction that actually fixes these institutions and fixes the problems that people actually experience, but in a way that will worsen. Okay? Calling every single person in stream over 55,000 people he's not venting is labeling. That behavior is exactly what the elite want you to do. They want you to alienate everyone that can be brought over to our cause. They want you to fracture and isolate. You're being too emotional. What are you talking about? The number doesn't matter. They believe what they... Okay, these guys are yapping amongst themselves. They're arguing amongst themselves. I'm not going to read it. But so there is no point where I'm not... There's no point where I've ever said that like right-wing sentiment and right-wing policies right now are not perceived as a overall good thing and people are actually in support of it. They have a much better way of marketing the things that they're doing that is in line with a lot of people's misunderstandings, the broader population's misunderstandings about the federal government. People don't like the government. They hate it, especially since the Reagan era. People have been anti-government and anti-taxation for that reason. I mean, Americans have always been anti-tax, but at least like when you compare it to European countries, like nobody likes to pay taxes, but at least in European countries with more expansive social safety nets, there's this collective understanding that like the money that you're giving back to the government is going to something that will inevitably help you down the line or help others down the line. We don't have that mentality here because the government has never worked in this country, or at least we have completely lost our confidence in the government ever doing something right by us. Okay. And decades of neoliberalism have ruined the federal government. No concept that like the money that you're giving back to the IRS that is going into the government coffers are actually going to fix the potholes or fix education, right? Or improve your infrastructure, improve your access to the internet, improve your internet bandwidth. None of that is a thing that we believe anymore. We just notice that everything is getting worse and worse all around us, right? And we think to ourselves, well, these guys, these are corporatist elites, break their backs. And when someone comes along and says, I'm the guy who's going to break their backs, I'm your leader, I'm going to do it, yeah, people think it's good. What they fail to recognize, however, is that Donald Trump is breaking the government in a way that will harm people, okay? This is my disagreement. So the popularity or the popular perception of Trump's policies right now does not change this dynamic for me at all. I am very well aware of it. And it is my job, I think, as a political commentator to explain why these policies are harmful to the broader American public. And that's what I do every day. But in terms of right-wing sentiment becoming more and more popular in spaces like this one, okay, that is, or at least like content creators pushing right-wing sentiment, is because of social perception. Unless they personally had a change of heart that dramatically changed everyone's opinions, including Amaranth, right? They're farming. That's all I was saying. It's a concept that everybody understands. It's called grifting. It's called farming. There are a lot of right-wing content creators out there. There are a lot of right-wingers out there that want to hear from right-wing content creators. It doesn't take too much to say the right-wing things that people will immediately give you positive feedback on. And that's precisely the reason why people do it. It's a grift. It's a concept that XQC understands very well. I think he literally says, I have grifted to the left for years and years and years. So I think he probably understands that, right? Or perhaps maybe he thinks you can only grift to the left, which is hilarious because very clearly it's much easier to grift to the right. If I were to be a grifter and these weren't my genuine opinions that I've defended for a decade now, I would probably become a right-winger and just, get a kick contract. It's not that hard.
People voted for Trump. Okay. Bro, regardless of what we were saying, okay, look at the amount of votes. Imagine saying it. The general population feels this way, but then the general population votes a different way. And you're like, well, I think you're just wrong. I mean,
I do think they're wrong. I think they're wrong. If tomorrow there was a vote to say we should enslave all black people and the democratic process went through, black people are 13% of the population, and people were, all these Americans voted for that, I would say it's wrong, right? And it's not even just, but the reason why I'm using it as an example is because that was the general sentiment for the longest time. Like even during the civil rights movement, in the aftermath of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, his disapproval rating was at 66%. He was overwhelmingly unpopular in the eyes of Americans. Many decades later, after a decent amount of whitewashing about his past, about his ideological leanings, now Martin Luther King is incredibly popular as a historical figure. My point is, it doesn't necessarily matter what the wishes of the masses are. Having said that, however, okay, my point is that I also do suspect that down the line, once Trump's, evisceration of the administrative state comes to fruition and people start noticing that the government is simply not working at all, even like the remaining parts of the government that used to work is not working, and the American quality of life is truly worse, then they will get resentful and angry. That's it. This has happened historically with all kinds of policy, for the record. This is not unique to Donald Trump in general. After all, one of the greatest examples I can point to is abortion. Many Americans that said that they were on board with restricting abortion very quickly turned around and said, oh my God, we were wrong. We actually don't want to limit that much. We just want to limit abortion this much. Like they basically clawed back and directly democratically voted by overwhelming numbers whenever it was presented as an option on a ballot to restore and enshrine protections in their state constitutions. So why did they do that in states that overwhelmingly voted? They did that because a lot of people don't understand the immediate impact of policy until it actually harms them, until it hurts them. Okay? Yeah, buyer's remorse.
What are we talking about here? I'm confused. You cannot say the general population doesn't like this, and then the general population. So much of
my naysayers unironically just go, I didn't understand what he's saying. I'm confused, but you must be wrong. You're arguing against a position that I have not presented. I'm not saying that Donald Trump's policies right now are broadly considered unpopular. Yeah, I don't think you understand.
Vision votes for somebody to be in office that holds those views. So who are you talking to? Like, who is the general population? Is it the residents of California? Is it the big cities' online personalities? Is it people that are on Facebook? Is it the Twitter Andes? No, stop saying the general population.
Also, especially in the United States of America, the majority opinion is not necessarily the majority of the voting public. That's the other side of this as well, especially because of Electoral College and many other reasons. Like the plurality of people, at least historically, the plurality of people don't vote. Yeah. 64% of the U.S. voted, and Trump won 49% of that vote. Exactly. But that doesn't matter either. Fair is fair. Trump fairly and squarely won the election. Okay, he did. Too big to rig, baby. He did.
That's what it is.
Really give a shit about politics. Too big to rig.
That is.
And then he continues to talk about like Asmongold's perspective or something. I don't understand, but
I disagree. I think holding the view that is the more popular does give you the more popularity. I think like another little hint of projection. If you hold leftist views in areas that are very outrage heavy and leftist, you get a lot of notoriety and you get a lot of appraisal. And his takes are extremely popular and are always in the center of what public opinion likes. And he speaks loudly about what people like, and he's just gonna.
He's saying Asmongold takes extremely centrist positions on broadly popular sentiment. He reads the room and tries to hit the center of that room. I don't think this is correct either. Like Donald Trump, even right now, despite the fact that he won the election, is not like an overwhelmingly popular president. He's not. He is more popular than he has ever been. What? Hasan, your commentary is good, but you're asking for charitability for people who've been told you're evil to listen to you. That's why you got to show, not tell, so they can't ignore you. For example, here's a 90-second clip from Michael Moore's document. Same thing that you're saying. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
That this country, which provides free health care for its people, nearly free daycare, also makes sure that the school lunches are fit for a king. I had to ask myself, how do the French afford all of this?
Europe, for the past 4 decades, has been raising taxes.
Very high income taxes.
Some higher taxes.
They're sick of the high taxes.
Gerard Depardieu said, no more. I'm out of here.
Here's how much the average working American pays in income and Social Security taxes, and those taxes get us the basic services: police, fire, roads, water, war, and bank bailouts. And here's what the average French worker pays in taxes: a little more than we do. And for paying just
Also, the other thing I want to point to, is that I am an advocate for certain things, certain policies, right? Certain policies that I believe will truly uplift the American working class. And the best example I can give you is obviously healthcare, right? I want a nationalized healthcare system, but I'll take socialized medicine in any capacity in the interim, in the short-term period. And that is a popular policy. That is a broadly, incredibly popular policy. Having said that, even if it wasn't, I would still advocate for it. I would still try to actively change the minds of as many Americans as I can to get them to understand that this is a good thing, that this is beneficial for them. Okay? Do you understand? It doesn't matter if it's like, it doesn't matter if Americans are running around saying like, nah, free healthcare is socialism. I don't want that. I'd rather die than get a communist doctor to fix my health problems or whatever. Like, I don't care if every American held that opinion. There are so many issues where I take a broadly, incredibly unpopular stance and then try to actively educate people on why this otherwise incredibly unpopular stance is actually go about business. This is it. Like, this is what I do for most things. Most Americans think Nancy Pelosi is a socialist, think communism, socialism is a pejorative in and of itself, and they hate everything about the Democratic Party for what they imagine is radical politics coming out of the Democratic Party when they're fucking unimaginably close to the Republicans in both domestic affairs, but certainly when it comes to foreign policy. Okay? What's an example of an unpopular stance you have? I mean, Palestine is a great example of this, I would say, because for the past decade, I have been unconditionally and uncompromisingly pro-Palestinian. Until recently, the pro-Palestinian position was a non-starter for so many people, including progressives, right? Now, post October 7, the tide has shifted, at least for people under the age of 35, okay? But pre-October 7, it was not even a question. It was not even a question. Other unpopular stances that I have that I think were appropriate at the time was advocating for a ceasefire in Ukraine when Ukraine had more leverage. Like the initial ceasefire proposal that was put on the table that fell apart. Everybody yelled at me for that. They said I'm, pro-Putin. I'm in the pocket of Putin. There are plenty of issues that I have been on the unpopular side of that a lot of Americans have basically walked their way to arriving at. Housing the homeless, moving towards a rehabilitative approach to criminal justice, supporting unions, so much. American foreign policy, the entirety of the American foreign policy, I'm very critical of, and Americans are very much in support of American foreign policy. I think that right now, especially at this stage, my advocacy for immigrants is unimaginably unpopular. Americans are so right-wing on this issue, especially now. So most of the things that I advocate for, either people come to that conclusion later down the line. That's why I always say history will vindicate me. Or even if they come to that same conclusion down the line, they still hold their older resentments. Their resentment continues, even if they agree. This is a very rare sight. You were right about Ukraine, must begrudgingly admit, but I respect it. I respect people who are, brave enough to, not even brave enough, but open-minded enough to recognize that, A lot of Hasan's general positions that would favor Americans are still contentious by both parties despite popular sentiment for those things, progressive ballot measure type stuff. Yes. One thing you said that blew my mind was to just document every immigrant. This will give more rights and help all immigrants, documented and undocumented. It would also help natural-born U.S. citizens as well. All right, let's continue.
A little bit more. They too get the basic services, but they also get all this extra stuff. We can get some of that stuff too, but we have to pay extra. And when we pay extra, we don't call it a tax. We call it tuition and daycare fees and the nursing home bill.
Yep.
And co-pays and deductibles and on and on and on.
But you see, when it's actually controlled by the government in the form of social safety nets, okay, the government has an incentive to keep those costs as low as possible. Ironically enough, this makes it so that your wages don't have to be that high either. This also makes it so that your GDP is smaller overall in comparison to the expensive GDP of the United States of America. Okay? So even if American cost of living is unimaginably high due to the fact that we have a virtually anarcho-capitalist state, and that all the money that we spend, all the money that we take from taxpayers, we just directly give back to corporations in the form of subsidies, and then those corporations don't actually lower prices all that much in return for that. All of that contributes to America being the wealthiest nation on earth. We're just cycling that money. But the problem is every nation cycles that money. It's just other countries distribute that money a little bit more evenly than the United States of America does. United States of America, on the other hand, distributes that money directly back to the top.
We don't call them taxes, but they are. And we pay a whole lot more than the French. One more thing. Every French paycheck has a detailed list of where they're flying. This is what our paycheck looks like. Other than Social Security and Medicare, it doesn't say a damn thing. Maybe if we saw where our income taxes were going, we wouldn't let Congress spend nearly 60% of it on this.
Yep. So yeah, an issue being popular or unpopular by the broader American public does not play a role in my personal opinion at all. And I think a lot of people don't understand this. This is a fundamental misunderstanding with my commentary in general. That's why I laugh whenever people say, "Oh, Hasan, you're grifting. Oh, Hasan, you're only adopting these positions because they're popular." When simultaneously they will readily admit that my positions are actually not broadly popular, and that people at a first glance, before they listen to me and I describe it to an audience that is charitable to hearing my opinion, my perspective, which is one that they either have A, never heard before, or B, have immediately contentious opinions on. But if they actually break through that mold, okay, if they break through that mold and listen to what I have to say without immediately assuming that I'm like lying to them or some shit, okay, or immediately assuming that I'm somehow grifting to this like simultaneously popular position, but that's also unpopular in general, okay, because I'm grifting to the left, I think that I will be able to convince them. But the underlying policy positions that I advocate for don't change. They don't change whether or not something is perceived as popular by the broader public.
Public opinion. So explain how that doesn't apply to him. Wait, no, they're not. There are extremely like public opinion glazing. What?
Yeah, that's the point. The overarching public opinion glazing doesn't change my advocacy at all. Whether it's incredibly popular or incredibly unpopular doesn't change the dynamic for me. I will talk about it. I will talk about why it's unpopular. I will explain to you why it should be more popular, how it will help you. But it's like, I'm the one who is working to advocate here. I'm not as audience captured as what my naysayers assume me to be. That's why it's always funny when they're like, Hasan is so audience captured. It's like, dude, have you seen the broader fucking American consciousness when it comes to like leftist opinions? Your ego is clouding your judgment. Admit you were wrong about Hamas, says young herpes. My ego is clouding my judgment. Admit I'm wrong about Hamas. I don't think you know the first thing about Israel Palestine, brother. I'm gonna be honest with you. Your name is literally Young Herpes, dog. I don't know what more to say. Right-wing content creators have done irreparable harm to young men. Look at the massive difference in male-female voters for Die Linke AfD aged 18 to 24. Yeah, I know. It is very, 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 it is very, very scary.